Those of you who are parents understand that there is almost nothing in the world as wonderful as welcoming a new child into the world. There's so much potential. There's so much to dream for. But when my youngest daughter was born, Kate, she was born with a medical condition where the bones in her head had fused together in the womb, and it wasn't diagnosed properly. It wasn't diagnosed when she was born, and it should have been. Because you see, there was always something not right when you looked at Kate. Her head, it looked a little bit more like a watermelon than a cantaloupe. And as she continued to grow, it seemed to be getting worse, and we kept asking the doctor about it. And the doctor kept saying, you know what, heads are funny. They get caught up under a rib when they're growing inside, and it will round out as she continues to grow. And we kept asking about it. And one time he even went as far as to tell me, Tom, go to the mall and look around at people. Everybody has different shaped heads. Yeah, there's a fun game for you. Go to the mall and look at people's noggins. There's a couple of them that you might notice, like, wow. But when Kate was 4 months old, the doctor decided we probably should do a CAT scan. Now, he assured us that this fusion thing that happens is very rare, and 80% of the time it happens to boys. So he told us not to really be concerned. But when the CAT scan came back, it was positive for a condition called sagittal synostosis. You see, it happens 80% of the time in boys, but Kate always likes to buck the odds, no matter what they are. And that CAT scan showed what looked like her head had been soldered shut from soft spot to soft spot. And what this meant was as she grew, and those of you who have kids know that they're always measuring their heads, babies grow fast, her head could never grow this way. It would only continue to grow that way. And we were given two choices. We could do nothing and raise a kid with some seriously limiting social issues. She would be teased relentlessly on the playground. They said that the term might be hatchet head because her head would continue to grow out like that. God, it's hard enough to be a kid. You don't want your nickname to be hatchet head. The other choice we were given, though, is we could elect to do surgery before she turned 6 months old. By the time we were diagnosed, she was already 5 months old, where they would remove most of the cap of Kate's skull. Well, this was the hardest thing that my wife Sarah and I ever had to go through. This was really kind of horrible for us to grasp. What did we do? The surgery had a lot of risks. Do we take the risks, or do we raise a kid and just deal with the issues that she would have to face? And then we realized, my wife's really smart, we realized that as parents, we had to make the decision that 16-year-old Kate would want us to make for her. Because she was 16 and had been teased her whole life, and she realized that even though there were risks, we did nothing, she might never forgive us. However, at the time, the city we live in, Austin, Texas, did not have a state-of-the-art children's hospital, nor did it have the best doctors in the country to operate on Kate, which meant we had a very small window where we had to go look for options. We had to talk to doctors everywhere, and finally, through a recommendation, through somebody we knew through our network, we were connected with a surgical team at Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego. My wife took Kate out there on a Monday morning to meet with the doctors, and she called me that night and said, "Get Jackie, our 5-year-old daughter, and get out here. He wants to do the surgery on Friday, and he is the first doctor to show any urgency." So we flew across country, and early on a Friday morning, in August of 2002, just days before Kate turned 6 months old, we handed her over to the team of doctors, and then we had to wait. The surgery was about 3.5 hours. It's probably the only time I could say time stood still. But just before noon, the nurse called my cell phone and said the words that I am never going to forget. She said, "Kate is gonna be fabulous." There was recovery because they sealed her up, but there was just skin over bone. There was going to be a lot of time that it took to grow back. She was going to have to wear a special helmet to help shape those bones as they grew back. But eventually that helmet came off, and we still had doctor's appointments every year until she was like 12 years old. We had to go and make sure that everything was coming together well. But it became clear that we had made the right choice, and that Kate was going to be fabulous. In fact, today Kate is fabulous. Kate is 16 years old. She is a sophomore at the Ann Richards School for Young Women Leaders. She's a straight A student. She is very, thank you. She is smart, she is beautiful inside and out, and Kate even gave her own TED Talk last year at 15 years old. Yeah, she is a force to be reckoned with. And my wife and I realized that not every child born in such circumstances, or every set of parents who have to make these difficult choices, not everybody is so fortunate. And so we felt very called that we had to find a way to give back to the greater good. We had to try and help others who might face similar situations. But here's the deal. My wife and I did not come from families who have their names on the walls of hospitals. We didn't know how to get involved. We didn't know if anything we did would ever make a dent in helping anybody else. Plus, I had had another experience. You see, there was another cause I wanted to get involved with when I was much younger, in my early 20s. And I tried to get involved, I made calls, I even went so far as to go into an event where the lead fundraiser was going to be. See, he was a local businessman and philanthropist, and I stood in line to get to talk to him. And when I got to him, I told him how excited I was about the project he was working on, how I wanted to be involved, I wanted to contribute. And he looked me right in the eye and he said, "Can you write me a check for $10,000 right now?" Well, no, I couldn't do that because I was young. I didn't have the financial means to write a $10,000 check. And upon hearing this, he shook his head and he turned and went and talked to somebody else. It was as if I had vanished into thin air. I was suddenly invisible, and I'll tell you what, that sucked. And I just assumed that because I couldn't write big checks, because I wasn't wealthy, that philanthropy didn't have a home for me. And so that's what I believed, is there was no place for me to try and really serve the greater good. But then in 2007, 5 years after Kate's surgery, Austin welcomed a new gym to our healthcare community. The Dell Children's Medical Center opened its doors when Kate was 5 years old. And I decided maybe this was a cause we could get involved with. Maybe this philanthropy would welcome us in, and I didn't know what we could do, but I called the foundation office, and I reached a woman named Mandy, and I set up an appointment. We met for coffee, and while we were sitting there, we had a discussion. I'll tell you what, Mandy was wonderful. She listened to the story about Kate and what we went through, and she told me that if Kate had been born just 5 years later, once the Dell Children's Center had opened, we would never have had to have traveled across the country with an infant to find medical care. That our community now had that state-of-the-art facilities. They had recruited some of the state-of-the-art top doctors in the country. And I'll tell you what, I still couldn't write a big check. But to Mandy, I was sitting right there. I was not vanishing into thin air. So we brainstormed about what could we do. We came up with some ideas, and we finally settled on the idea that we would start a named endowment for research for kids born with craniofacial abnormalities. Now, to have a permanently named endowment for the Dell Children's Foundation was $10,000. God, I'd heard that before. But she said, what if we don't do it in one check? What if you take 5 or 6 years to reach this goal? What if you do that? Is that something you think you could get behind? Well, yeah, that was kind of exciting. And once we reached that number, we would then have that permanently named endowment. I could do this. I was kind of excited about it. And at that time, I had just started a side business. I still had a full-time job as a marketing director, but I had started a side business. And I decided, and my wife decided, that we would pledge just a little bit, just a little percentage points of every check I earned through that side business. And we would just funnel it straight. Every time I'd make a little money, we'd send it to the Dell Children's Foundation. And we would just do this over and over and over. And you know what? We did. And here's the interesting thing. That was 12 years ago. Now, over that 12 years, a lot of things have happened. That little side business has become my full-time career. So now, every time I make money, we continue to send that over. And what happened is that we actually made that $10,000 not in 5 or 6 years. We got there in 3 years. And we didn't stop giving. We would hold some fundraisers via social media, Facebook and Twitter on Kate's birthday. And some of our friends would donate $10 here, $25 there, $100 there, and we would pool that money together. Because you see, when you invest in a foundation, they take that money that's invested and they invest it so that it grows. Traditionally, they only spend the profits that they make. But the profits from what we donated were going to be earmarked for craniofacial research. Fast forward to today, and that fund at Dell Children's Foundation and another one that we started at the Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego, where Kate had her surgery, total over $70,000. I still don't have the means to write a giant check. If I walked into a charity today and said, I'm going to write you a $70,000 check, they'd fall over, they'd put me on the cover of the newsletter. But we didn't do this in a single check. We did this over time, and it grew, and we invested, and it grew, and it grew. We got other people involved, and it just kept going. You see, I call this, oh, and by the way, when we hit $10,000, they put Kate's name on the wall of that hospital. So while I didn't come from a family with their name there, Kate's name is on the wall at the Dell Children's Foundation under the Kate Singer Endowment on what's called their butterfly wall, where they list all of their endowments. Now, I call this compounded generosity. Think about that for a minute. It's the same principle, it's the same concept as what we talk about in personal finance, right? We teach young earners that they should start saving for retirement early, because the earlier they start, the longer the runway they're going to have to invest and see that money compound. Well, the same thing is true if you want to serve the greater good, if you want to get involved with a philanthropic endeavor. You don't have to do it all at once. Compounded generosity is fascinating in the way it works, because you do not need to be rich to be a philanthropist. You just have to have that long-term vision and the commitment to keep going. Now, that has grown, as I said, to $70,000. And my wife and I sat down and figured, as our income goes up and we keep giving and we keep holding these fundraisers, how big do we think this could get before we retire? And we actually believe, we started off hoping we could get to $10,000. We actually believe that before I retire, these two funds will total over $250,000. Now, Kate said to me recently, she said, Dad, what if I take it over when you get older and I go into the workforce? What if I start donating a little bit of money that I earn? What if I continue to ask other people to donate on my birthday and do little fundraisers? Do you think it could be $1 million? Yeah, I think it could. I love the fact that Kate dreams big. You see, compounded generosity is really something that, compounded generosity is something that everybody can do. All you have to do is think about it in that term of how you get involved and stay with it. Because when you commit to something and you donate over time, all of a sudden your donations are impacted by compounded interest. But by interest, I'm not talking about the kind you get from a bank. By interest, I'm talking about where you put your attention. And when you put your attention on something that you care about, it changes who you are. It affects you at the level of your soul. So I'm going to challenge each and every one of you. Think about, what is it that you care about? What cause could you get involved with? And put compounded generosity to the test in your own life. You see, while charities do care and appreciate the big checks that come from corporations and foundations, as the Kate Singer Endowment started to grow, I had an aha moment. The catalyst for this message that I'm sharing with you right now. One of the team members at the Rady Children's Hospital said to me, Thom, how do we find 1,000 people like you to donate? Well, it starts right here. You never need to feel invisible if you feel compelled to give. The compounded generosity approach is real. So find your cause, donate what you can, and stay committed. This is the art of giving small.